all of these different, astronauts, pilots, fatigue. You want them to have high vigilance every single time. I thought I was going to be a heart person, and everybody had sleep problems. So I think as we learn more of sleep and human health, it's not only the amount of sleep you get, but the timing of sleep and how consistent you are with your sleep patterns.
From the National Institutes of Health Clinical Center,
this is
Discovering
Hope in Science. My name is Janice from the Office of Communications and Media Relations, and I'll be your host today. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the published article entitled Sleep, Time, and Space, Fatigue and Performance Deficits in Pilots, Commercial Truck Drivers, and Astronauts. And I'm very excited to have the author, Dr. Katherine Maki, here with us today. Hi, Dr. Maki.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit more about your published article and your findings.
Absolutely. I was brought on to work on this review by Dr. Ann Fink, along with Dr. Terry Weaver. So they're both experts in sleep and sleep apnea, which is a sleep disordered breathing that's really common in Americans. We were working on a special issue for Dr. David Dinges, who is one of the pioneers in sleep performance and fatigue. And he developed what's called the psychomotor vigilance test, which is an objective measure of sleep and attention and performance that we highlight in this article. We focused on occupations that require sustained vigilance and high performance, like astronauts, pilots, and truck drivers. What we found was that in a lot of these occupations that require high attention, that under 7 hours of sleep, which is the recommended amount of sleep someone gets per day, that was really common, especially in astronauts, which has been reported anecdotally because you don't really have markers of day or night. So we did confirm those findings, but then we also saw that when people had early shift start times, they also had really reduced amount of sleep. So shift time really mattered. And then across studies, a sign of reduced performance on that psychomotor vigilance test, the one that I mentioned before, which is that objective measure of sleep, that was associated with shorter sleep times, which was expected, but also when someone had the early morning start times, longer durations of being awake during their work shift, but also higher reported fatigue, which also is pretty expected. So I think this highlights the importance to continue with outreach and policy work to help with sleep health in these populations, because all of these different, astronauts, pilots, fatigue, you want them to have high vigilance, high performance, high reactivity, because their jobs are really, really important for their performance.
Why is this research important, and how will this impact the health of Americans?
Well, I could talk about this forever. I think this adds to the growing body of knowledge of how important sleep health is. And so I was excited to see, as both a cardiac nurse in my previous life, but also a sleep researcher, that the American Heart Association added sleep to Life's Essential 8, which is their recommended cardiovascular risk reduction behaviors. So we can see that objective performance and reaction times can really suffer when you're not getting the sleep. So you are not feeling great, but it also can affect your job as well, which is, I think, something that's really important. The data that we found that linked early shift work starting times, but also sleeping during the day, which is out of sync with our normal body rhythm, which is called our circadian rhythm, that's a highlight of being really important in addition to just the sleep length. And that's something that's important to our branch. We've been really focusing on a lot about it. And one of my colleagues recently published a paper. Her name is Dr. Jen Barb, and it was on the sleep regularity index. And that when people have less consistent sleep and wake times, they are at a higher rate of relapse after treatment for alcohol use disorder. So it's not just job performance things, but other health behaviors can be affected as well. So I think as we learn more of sleep and human health, it's not only the amount of sleep you get, but the timing of sleep and how consistent you are with your sleep patterns.
If you had one thing you'd like the public to know from your research, what would that be?
That health behaviors are really important. In my research, I focus on different types of health behaviors like stress and sleep, and how that can relate to the different bacterial communities in your body. So I focus on the oral and the gut microbiome, or the bacteria that live in your mouth and your gut, how those different bacterial communities can signal to your brain. I think that understanding how changes in stuff like sleep timing, sleep behaviors can really affect many things, including your health and how you feel, could be really important, and hopefully kind of give us some ideas of different biomarkers that I hope to study in future research.
Thank you for just talking to us about the wonderful research you're doing at the Clinical Center.
Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for listening to Discovering Hope in Science. For more episodes, please visit cc.nih.gov/ocmr/abstracts.